guys, so today's video is going to be my April reading wrap up. I decided I'm going to film this just sitting down and talking to you guys about the 20 books that I read in April. I read 20 books, y'all, okay? And I think I had my best reading month yet of the whole year. I really did not read a bad book in April. And I was surprised because I thought that in like the middle of April, but then to end the month with such a bang, I'm just so happy. And I think reading all these really, really amazing books in April really didn't slump me out as much as I usually get in the end of the month, usually, because I always tell you guys that usually at the end of the month, I don't really feel like reading as much but y'all, I've read 75 books this year so far. 75 books. With 2 rereads, it's 77. But I don't count the 2 rereads, which was Fourth Wing and Iron Flame. I read 75 books. Is that crazy? I think it's a little cray-cray. So, I did... I needed to turn up the light because I feel like you guys cannot see me. But this light is always so blinding, so bear with me. I'm just gonna, do that. But I can't, like, adjust the brightness anymore. Let's see if I can, I don't know. Maybe I could do that. Yeah, then it's not as blinding, but whatever. I still feel like it's too blinding. We're just going to keep it the way it was because it's just, like, really annoying. So anyway, sorry if it's a little dark, but you don't really have to see the book covers that clearly. So yeah, we read 20 books this month. I didn't get to a couple, which was Angel Mage. That was my Angel prompt. I forgot who the author is, but that was a standalone fantasy. I didn't get to that one. I really wanted to though, but I ended up reading another standalone fantasy that was on my TBR this month still. So I will talk about that later. I also didn't get to Firefly Lane by Kristen Hanna again, which was my historical fiction prompt. I'm so mad that I didn't get to it, but I did put it on my May TBR, and I'm going to be reading it in May. I also did not get to Swift and Saddled by Lila Sage, but actually I am going to be currently reading it right now. I actually started it at Barnes & Noble, so this is going to be my current read, and I'm on page 45 already. So I'm just saying that this is not going to be one that I finish this month. I'm probably going to literally finish it tomorrow, so like May 1st. So, oh no, but then I will be continuing that series. I also finished off 2 series this month, and I did just finish a trilogy. So, very excited to make some progress in some series that I've been wanting to read for a while. I don't know what the other ones were that I didn't get to on my I didn't get to Desperate Measures by Katie Robert, but I ended up reading a different book for that prompt, which I will talk about later. That book was cray, but I ended up fulfilling the dark romantasy or dark fantasy prompt or dark romance, whatever you want to call it, with this other book that I read. And I think that was it. So I did pretty good with my TBR in April. I did read most of the books that I wanted to read. I also read all of the books that were new releases in April that I wanted to read. I know there were definitely quite a few. But I read I think it was, including the arcs that I was able to read in March, I think I read like 8 new releases for April. So that's pretty damn good. Because I still read The Hollow Hunt and A Drop of Corruption, which both came out April 1st as well. And then I read 2 other books that came out April 1st, literally April 1st and April 3rd. So I will talk about those in a minute. But I don't think there's any other ones that were on my TBR that I didn't get to. I just wanted to look at my cart really quick. Yeah, all of them I just put back on the cart, but honestly, I made some really good progress with my TBR this month. We're not always going to get to all the books. And honestly, I didn't really get to mood read as much as I would have liked to this month, but also all the new releases that I picked up were literally books that I was in the mood to read anyway. I was like so excited to read them anyway. So let's jump into it. So The first book that came out in April, on April 1st, that I was literally the most excited to read, and this was probably one of my highest anticipated reads of the year, is Abby Jimenez's Say You'll Remember Me. So this was obviously going to be the first book that I read in April. Abby Jimenez is my Super Bowl. I absolutely love her books. She's my absolute favorite romance author. And if you guys didn't know, I gave this book a 5 stars. I adored the romance in this book, you guys. The way that Abby Jimenez writes romance, but still is able to address so many emotional topics, but still keeps the romance the core of the story, is so beautifully written. I feel like some other authors kind of lose sight of the romance when they try to like cover different topics in their books, but like Abby Jimenez somehow integrates it perfectly. I don't know how she does it. So basically this book is about Samantha and Xavier, and Xavier meets Samantha one night because she picks up a stray dog or cat, I can't remember, and she brings him to his vet clinic, and he ends up being the vet that takes care of this stray, and he ends up liking her and she likes him, and they decide to go out on a date like a couple days after that. So they go out on a date and they have like this chemistry from like one night. And I know people say it was like really insta-lovey, but I don't know. I just thought it was so adorable. The way that Abby Jimenez does insta-love is like kind of the best insta-love I've ever read, to be honest, because she knows how to do it when it's not like a cringe kind of thing. But then it turns out Xavier doesn't live in, I believe he doesn't live in California, but she does. And he has to go back to, I think it's Georgia or Louisiana. I can't remember where he lives, but it's not in California. But Samantha, unfortunately, can't leave California because her family lives there. And what's so funny is that my sister's name is Samantha and she lives in Santa Monica. So I just wanted to point that out. I'm pretty sure she's the one that lives in California. But anyway, her mother, unfortunately, well, actually not her mother. Is it her mother or her grandmother? I think it's her mother that suffers from dementia. And actually her grandmother is of sound mind, and her grandmother lives with them along with, you know, her mother and her father, and she lives with her mother because she needs to take care of her along with the rest of her family. So she has family burdens that unfortunately prevents her from being with Xavier, but as time goes on, they realize that they love each other, and it was just so beautifully written. I absolutely love some of the quotes that Abby Jimenez writes. But yeah, I just adored this book. I don't care what anybody says. This was beautiful, beautifully written, and one of my favorite books that I read in April. And I think this might be my like 3rd or 4th favorite. It didn't top Part of Your World or Yours Truly for me. Those are still my 2 favorite Abby Jimenez books that I've read. But this one was probably a close 3rd or 4th. Just the Part of Your World series is just like some of my favorite romance books ever. And people kept on saying how sad this book was. Yes, it was sad, but I actually think Just for the Summer and Life's Too Short were even sadder than this book. But there were some very hard topics covered in this book, but it was beautifully written. So I absolutely love Abby Jimenez's writing. I will read anything she comes out with. Okay, so the next book that we read in April was Nightweaver by R.M. Gray. I think I actually started this on March 30th. Yeah, that's what it says. And I finished it the 3rd of April. And this is by, did I say it's by R.M. Gray? This is a YA romantasy debut. And you guys, this book was so freaking good. I really liked this book a lot. And it says, I will not let them take me. It's just the sprayed edges are beautiful. And I really, really liked this. And this immediately jumped into the action, which I really love about a lot of YA fantasy romantasy kind of books. This kind of reminded me of the way that The Daughter of the Pirate King was written, where there's like nonstop action, the plot moves along constantly, and there was a lot of like celestial magic in this. So the main character's name is what is her name? Aster? Yeah. 17-year-old Aster Oberon and her pirate family. So basically Aster stays with her family, but then she slowly uncovers secrets that like her parents are not what they seem. And she slowly discovers that she might not be related to them, pretty much. It's not really spoiling anything because you kind of like suspect it anyway. But you realize that Aster is finding out a lot more about herself because she befriends the prince, which is supposed to be their enemy, because the prince is actually, I think he's a Night Weaver. Yeah, when a handsome Night Weaver named Will offers the Oberons protection and work at his opulent estate, Aster is suspicious. As the arrogant and entitled right hand to the wicked prince, Will is everything that she has been taught to hate. So it was just really good. I might not have too much of a memory of what happened, but honestly, there was like such awesome magic in this, and the way that the monsters were explained were just so cool, and the magic system was really cool. So I really enjoyed this. I enjoyed every minute of it. I actually read the entire book physically. I didn't have the audiobook of this. Oh, I mostly listened to the audiobook of Say You'll Remember Me, and I only ended up reading like the last 30 pages because by the time I had picked it up physically, I was already like 75% into the actual audiobook. And then I just finished the last 30 pages because the audiobook was so freaking good. But yeah, this was awesome. I cannot wait for the second one. It comes out in November. And you best believe I'm going to be picking up the sequel. Hopefully it ends up getting an audiobook by that point, because I feel like this would make an amazing audiobook. But the way that it left off, I'm so excited. So that's basically what that's about. You don't really need too much of a plot. Like, I would just say read it. It was just so freaking good, and it's getting great reviews, and I 100% agree. I thought it was great. Can I speak? 100%. Okay, next up was another new release that I actually was not intending on reading this month, but it also came out April 1st, and I have read the entire Magnolia Park series before, so I've read 5 of Jessa Hastings' books. So I'm talking about the newest release by Jessa Hastings, and that is The Conditions of Will. Now, I didn't know that there were going to be some Magnolia Parks references in this book, y'all. So I would suggest, even though everybody's waiting on Beck and Call and Bated Breath when the next Magnolia Parks books comes out, which is another Daisy Hates books. And if you guys know, I'm a Magnolia Parks girly. I don't like Daisy Hates. I think they're boring. I love Magnolia Parks though. Magnolia and BJ are like injected into my bloodstream. So everyone's waiting for the new Daisy Hates book. But in the meantime, people were like, why is this book coming out when we're all waiting for Daisy Hates? But honestly, this book was really good, you guys. And I was really curious about what this was going to be about. And basically, it's about this girl named Georgia and her incredibly toxic, flawed, fucked up family, pretty much. And Georgia's incredibly smart. She's basically like a psychologist, and she pretty much cannot stop analyzing everybody all the time. And something traumatic happened to her when she was little, from her sister's boyfriend. And her sister has always been a narcissist. So it was very interesting to see, like, from her perspective, what she would analyze about her sister. And then her gay brother has always, struggled in her family to fit in. But meanwhile, and also, like, this is in South Carolina. I meant to say South Carolina. So they are like a super religious Christian family, and he comes out as gay. So the only person who ended up accepting him was Georgia. And also he's always struggled with drugs and alcohol. So he gets a sponsor named Sam. And also they have one other sibling. I forget his name, but she's her other brother. So there's 2 sisters and 2 brothers. And Sam ends up sponsoring her gay brother so he can get sober. But then Georgia and Sam end up developing a romance. And I just wanted to say I absolutely adored Sam in this book. He was probably my favorite character. I really liked Georgia as well. So I really liked the main female character. And also I really adored Sam. But then tragically, their father ends up passing away. So they all need to find out what the conditions are of the will, but also I like her play on words because Georgia's the only person in this family so that pretty much follows her own free will because she doesn't want to be tied down to this family that basically has disowned her. But she still comes back for the funeral because she feels that it's necessary, but also like she doesn't care like if she gets money from the will, she just wants to know if like her dad had ever validated her in any way. And it's actually ends up being really sad with some of the siblings' reactions to this will because, his dad also never accepted that her brother was gay either. So basically that's what it's about, and I'm going to leave it there but this book was really, really good. I gave it a 4.25 stars. Sorry, I forgot to say I gave Nightweaver a 4.5, but I remembered a lot more about the conditions of will than I did Nightweaver, which is crazy. But that doesn't bump down my rating anymore. The conditions of will, I guess, stuck out more to me with the plot. So anyway, the next book that I ended up finishing was the audiobook that I listened to in April, and that is You Killed Me First by John Marrs. I really wanted to listen to this book in March, but I just didn't have a chance to. This book, I believe, came out March 4th. John Marrs is like the king of unhinged characters, you guys. This book was so freaking good. I gave this, I believe, a 4.5 as well. It was actually really close to being a 5-star. Basically, it's about a bunch of toxic-ass, unhinged characters, and they, it's about these 3 different women's lives that are pretty much all tied to this one night that one of the houses burned down. And that's basically all you need to know. Like, you end up getting a lot of their background. There's a lot of different characters to follow in this. We have Margot, we have Liv, and we have, what is the other lady's name? Margot is a faded TV star, so she is pretty much washed up, and she's trying to get, some relevance back. So she kind of comes up with this crazy plot in order to have relevancy. And also Liv, ends up, like, cheating with, one of these other dudes and stuff like that. So they're pretty flawed, toxic women. And then the other lady's name, why can't I remember what her name is? It doesn't list it in the synopsis. But basically, like, it was just so good, you guys. This kept me on the edge of my seat, and my jaw was on the floor multiple times because John Marrs is not afraid to kill people in his thrillers, and he's becoming one of my favorite thriller authors. He's definitely a really good, like, not like super, like, I was a little bit creeped out not really creeped out, but I was just shocked like a couple of times, but it definitely kept me on the edge of my seat, and I could not wait to see what happened next. But basically that's what happens, but also there's like multiple crimes committed that night of the bonfire. So there's this bonfire that happens, and unfortunately there's people stuck inside when this house burns down, and you find out layer by layer and from these 3 women's perspectives on what happened that night. And it's just really good. It was just really good. I'm just going to leave it there because I don't like to give away too much about thrillers, but it was just so good. Okay, Next up was one of my most highly anticipated reads of the entire year, and that is Enchantra, which is the sequel to Phantasma by Kaylee Smith. I also gave this book a 4.5. I did not love it as much as the first book, because I gave the first book a 5 stars, and Blackwell is one of my favorite shadow daddies of all time. I just love the atmosphere of Phantasma. This one was more so like family dynamic in hell, and basically like Ro is the main character, or main male character, and then the main female character is Genevieve, and Genevieve is Ophelia's sister from the first book. And basically she has to go through her own Wicked Games trials in this book. And this one I think takes place more so in the springtime. And basically she has to join this competition with Ro and his siblings in hell. And she has to figure out how to get out of the games. So it was a little bit repetitive of the first book, but the banter between Ro and Genevieve was hysterical. Basically, I described this book as a rom-com in hell, because the way that Kaylee Smith describes this book is Ready or Not meets Throne of the Fallen. And if you guys didn't know, I gave both of those books 5 stars, but I didn't give this book a 5 star. Because Throne of the Fallen is a 6-star read for me. That's probably my favorite romantasy ever that I've read so far. I just love that book so much. So the fact that Throne of Secrets wasn't that good, we're not going to talk about it. But Throne of the Fallen is just amazing. But anyway, Enchantra was really fun, really fast-paced. I think I finished it in like a day and a half. It was just so easy to get through. But I just didn't love it as much as the first book, but it was still so much fun. Okay, next up was one of my favorite books that I read this month, and this was my first 5-star, my first 5 stars since I had read Say You'll Remember Me, because obviously you know I was going to give that a 5 star anyway. But I actually didn't end up crying in Say You'll Remember Me, but I cried so much reading this book. And I love this book. Oh my god, this book was so goddamn good. So it's Our Infinite Fates by Laura Steven. This book was getting so much hype, so I was like, I just need to read it. This was actually one of my only mood reads this month. And also it was a March new release, so I was like, I really wanted to read it. And also I ended up catching up with a lot of March releases this month. And also I read, like I said, all the April releases I wanted to read. And I still ended up reading extra books and another series and finished another series. So you guys, I was crushing books this month. But this book, you guys, I absolutely adore this. This was so beautifully written. Oh my god, the writing in this book is so beautiful. So the 2 main characters are Evelyn and Arden, and basically they are condemned to kill each other in every lifetime. So they are reincarnated and they come back to life, but they don't live past 18. They never live past their 18th birthday. So basically they grow up and they know that they're destined to die. So she unfortunately has to help her sister in the current lifetime that she's in. And her sister is actually suffering from cancer. And she is the only donor that's able to save her. But also she's allergic to anesthesia. So the operation that she has to do, she has to be awake during the entire thing. Like, that is devotion, you guys. But I absolutely fell in love with this book. I knew from the moment I started this book, I'm like, this is going to be a 5 star. It was just so incredible. And honestly, I think this is 100% worth the hype. I think you guys, if you guys were debating on reading this book, read it. It was just that good. That's all I'm going to say. But again, there was such beautiful writing in this book. And the last, oh my god, one of the twists in this book, one of the best twists I've ever read. I suspected some deal with the devil was broken, but the fact that one of these characters had my jaw on the floor, like, and I literally had to walk away from this book for a second, and I was like, what? Like, it was crazy, but this book was fantastic, you guys. I absolutely loved it. So we'll just leave it there. Okay, next up, we did read another most highly anticipated reads of the year, and that was the third book in the Powerless trilogy, which was Fearless by Lauren Roberts. Now, I could go on and on and on about this book. I gave it a 4.5 out of 5 stars, okay? I was getting the 5-star feelings with this book until, like, I think like 50 or 60% of the way through. And then she killed off a character that really devastated me. But you guys, I cried so much in this book. But also I feel like Lauren, she fucked with our emotions so much in this book, you guys. I really can't say much about it because it's going to get really spoilery if I do. But basically, Peyton and Kai have to figure out how the hell they're going to be able to be together. Because Kit is king now, and Peyton is supposed to be his queen. So that's basically what's happening. There's also still a war going on between the elites and the ordinaries. Or the what? Not the ordinaries. The why can't I remember what they're called? The mundanes. The mundanes. Duh. So, y'all, there was just a bunch of complicated emotions that went on with me with this book. And again, I can't really say much. But we do find out a lot in this book. But I honestly feel like Powerless is like a romantic soap opera. Like, because it's really dramatic, but also it can be really funny. And Lauren Roberts' writing in this, I think, was such a step up from Reckless. And this was so much better than Reckless, you guys. I can definitely say I was not bored at all in this one. And I felt like the plot moved along a lot better. But also just the conflicting emotions that I had in this book. I wish we would have seen a little bit more interaction between the elites and mundanes and why they're still, you know, fighting. We only got like 1 or 2 parts of that. And then literally the last like 20% of this book was like letters from Kai and the way that he feels and like revealing a lot of stuff at the end. But then the ending was devastating and I just cried through like the epilogue. But like, I was crying so much in this book, and then I thought somebody else got killed, and I was crying through that too, and then I was like, wait, what? And then I almost threw my Kindle across the room, okay? That's how upset I was reading this book, but it was still really, really good, beautiful writing. I still hadn't finished my Powerless listen, you know, because I wanted to reread it, meaning I wanted to listen to the audiobook. And I got probably like 30% into it. And then, of course, y'all know that I always get distracted by other audiobooks. But I needed something like super light after that because I was like having a book hangover after I read Fearless. So I decided to pick up the first book in the Rebel Ranch series, which is Done and Dusted by Lila Sage. I only ended up reading the first one this month. But this was just a mindless little palate cleanser. It's about these 2 characters named Emmy and what is the man's name? Luke. And basically it's just a cowboy romance. Like, there's not really much to this book, to be honest. Honestly, I don't even know if I really remembered the plot of this because it was pretty cringe, but also it was kind of cute. Basically, Luke is her brother's best friend. And they end up falling in love. And that's pretty much all you need to know. Like, honestly, there's really not much to this book. And she also has a tragic accident on a horse. And she's, like, afraid to get back on a horse. And Luke basically inspires her to start horse racing again. Or horse competing or whatever. But it was just cute. And honestly, I just really wanted, like, an easy cowboy romance. Because I actually have never read one before. So that was one of my goals for 2025 is that I wanted to read a cowboy romance and I wanted to read this series. So they're just cute little palate cleansers. Honestly, there's not much to the plot. It basically says She left her small hometown of Meadowlark, Wyoming, went to college and made her a career for herself by doing her favorite thing, riding horses. Luke Brooks is a Meadowlark's most notorious bad boy. Oh, okay, now I remember. So basically, he's not really known to be committing to anybody. So people think that he's not really that good for her. And also, she kind of has to keep it a secret from her brother because, you know, her brother would feel betrayed if his best friend ended up dating his sister. So they kind of keep it on the DL and they don't really tell him. And that's pretty much it. So it was cute. 3.25 stars. Again, it wasn't really that memorable. But it was a cute little palate cleanser. Honestly, it was not a bad book at all. But there were some kind of cringe moments in this. But nothing to make me not want to read it anymore. But so far, starting Swift and Saddled, there was already kind of some cringe moments. But honestly, sometimes you need that kind of writing because there's some books that just, you know, really, really get you thinking. And yeah, so anyway, next up is When in Rome by Sarah Adams. I decided to finally continue the When in Rome series. And the author says herself that you don't need to necessarily read these in order. They're interconnected standalones. Basically, you did get a bit more background from the siblings dynamic in Beg, Borrow, or Steal, but honestly, again, it does not ruin anything. It's really not spoilery at all. There was only like one other video that I saw where they said that you really do need to read these in order, but honestly, you really don't. Why is my phone ringing? Sorry. So basically this is about Ray and no, her name is Amelia and the man's name is, why can't I remember his name? Noah. So Noah is the oldest sibling out of the 4 siblings that this series is about. So we have Noah, we have Annie, we have Emily, and then the 4th book is going to be about Madison. I can't believe I remembered that. But basically, Noah is the oldest brother and the only son in this family of siblings. So Noah lives in the small town, and Amelia goes off on her own adventure because she is actually a famous pop star named Ray Rose. But she goes to this small town to see if she can, you know, find herself and, like, you know, take some time off from her crazy, chaotic pop star life. And basically her car stalls like in the middle of his lawn. And it was actually really funny because Sarah Adams' writing is freaking hilarious. And she like stalls in like his yard. And she thinks that he's gonna kill her because, you know, but also she went off on her own with like no bodyguards, nothing. And basically, Noah tries to help her. And she's like, no, how do I know you're not going to murder me? He's like, I'm not going to murder you. You're also on my lawn. And she's like, oh. But then he also, like, finds one of her neighbors so she can vouch for him. That, you know, that she can trust him. And basically, he offers to let her stay with him. I mean, it kind of takes some convincing because she can't find, like, a bed and breakfast to stay in because it's all booked up. So she has to stay with him overnight and wait to see if she can get her car fixed like in the morning. And then when she takes it to the shop, she ends up finding out that she has to stay in this town for a week. And she's like, where am I going to stay? And then he offers to let her stay with him. But then they end up falling in love in like a week. And that kind of really annoyed me because it's like, if they had kissed after a week and then they would be like, you know, let's see where this relationship goes. And I honestly feel like this book needed an epilogue or like a little bit of like a bonus chapter or like a bonus scene or something because it did feel a little bit too insta-lovey to me. So that's what bumped this down from a 4-star to a 3.75 because I don't love the insta-love trope. But also this book was really well written and really witty and very funny. So I do really enjoy Sarah Adams' writing. And I do like the writing of this one more so than the second one, which we'll get into in a minute. But just the insta-love kind of annoyed me. So yeah, that's what this one was about. Okay, so next up, I actually did end up reading 2 more Kindle reads. So I ended up reading a novella in the Shatter Me series, which was Believe Me by Tahira Mafi. And the reason why I wanted to read this is because I wanted to gear up for the new release that was coming out in the Shatter Me universe. So I wanted to read the last novella before it came out just to see whether or not it was essential for me to read this. It only took me 4 hours to read. And this was just okay. This basically was about Warner and Juliet's wedding. And that's pretty much it. I can't really say anything else or it's going to spoil stuff. And basically that is a spoiler already, just saying that, because in the first couple Shatter Me books, it's basically a love triangle. So yeah, I ended up reading that synopsis before I actually finished the series, or I read like a couple of lines of it to see like how many other novellas that were in it, or which ones that were worth reading besides the first two, because everything that I had read on Reddit and read online was that you only really needed to read the first two novellas and it's not necessary to read the other two. So, but I wanted to read this because I kind of wanted to gear up to be back in the world of Shatter Me, because the new book was coming out in the New Republic series, which was called Watch Me by Tahira Mafi. So obviously this was the next book that I read in April. You guys, this book was so good. I gave this, I believe, a 4.25 as well. So basically this book is about the New Republic, and it's set, I believe 10 years after the events of the Shatter Me series. And basically this is after like Juliet and Warner take down the reestablishment. And it's about the main character named Erin, and the female main character is, why can't I remember her name? Rosabelle. So Rosabelle, she kind of had too similar of a story to Juliet, and that's what bumped my rating down a little bit more. But I did really like her. And basically she is very poor, and she also like has to, help her sister out no matter what. She basically starves herself in order to make sure that her sister eats. It's really, really hard to read about. And there's some like very devastating scenes about her parents that were actually pretty graphic. And I was like, oh my God, this is so goddamn sad. So I'm actually surprised that like Tahira Mafi's books don't have trigger warnings in the beginning of them, because even though they're YA books, I do think that they do need a couple of trigger warnings, because they're kind of similar to like the Hunger Games. Like you can definitely see the influence of the Hunger Games from Shatter Me at this point, and we'll talk about that later. But basically, what's his name? Why can't I remember his name? No, not Aaron. Oh my God. James. Oh my God, James. So James is like the little boy and also Adam's brother in Shatter Me. So this is his story, which was so cool to see. But also, he is with Warner and Adam and Juliet in their like colony of like their refuge, basically. And James actually is trying to rebel against the reestablishment, but he also Rosabelle is actually assigned to kill James because she still works for the reestablishment, because that's the only way that she gets money. But she doesn't believe in anything that the reestablishment is doing. And that's basically what goes on. And he ends up having to work with her, even though like he could care less about her and he thinks that, that she's going to kill him. But they end up being forced to work together. So he has to bring her back to Juliet and Aaron and Kenji. after I saw them on the page again, I was just feeling so nostalgic. Oh my God. And I was so happy that I had binged the series back in February, so I was ready for this book, but I thought it was so good. And honestly, you guys, I love the Shatter Me series way more than This Woven Kingdom. I honestly feel like feels like it's from two different authors, like written by two different authors. I don't understand why This Woven Kingdom is just so damn slow to me. Because I finished this book in a day, y'all, okay? I started the audiobook and started it on Kindle literally the day it came out. And then I think I was already on page like 200 by the time I went to sleep. And then I just finished the last like 130 pages the next day. And then I had already finished the book. Because literally, like I said, with YA, dystopian, especially, or like YA fantasy, it takes me like no time to read them. They take me like 1 or 2 days each. So I really liked it, and it was so much fun. Okay, then the next book that I read was the second book in the Glimmer Falls series, which was A Demon's Guide to Wooing a Witch, you guys, by Sarah Hawley. I am just so happy that I finally made some progress on this series. Ow, I just hurt my elbow. Ow, it hurt a lot. Jesus. So this is the second book in the Glimmer Falls series, and you guys, these books are just so funny. They're so much fun. So this one is about Caladia and Astaroth. And basically Caladia is Mariel's best friend from the first book, and she's also the mayor's daughter. And the mayor is like a piece of shit. Like, you can't really trust her. It's basically like basic politics. And Astaroth is the other demon that ends up being summoned by, actually not even summoned by her. I think he just ends up on, in the town that she lives in. And she ends up hearing him call for help. And she thought that he needed help, but then she's like, oh, you're a demon, or like found out he ended up being a demon, and he ends up having to, stay with her, and she ends up having to help him, and they end up developing a romance. And that's basically what happened in the first book. So it was kind of a little bit too repetitive of the first book. I gave this a 4 stars, but it was still incredibly funny. I love the way that Sarah Hawley writes smut. It's hot, but some of it's also really, really funny. And also, again, her banter and like some of her concepts in these books are hysterical. I'm always dying laughing from these books. They're just so funny. They're just such a good time. And I recommend these books to everybody at this point. I think I'm going to give the first book to one of my friends who just got into reading. And when I told her about it, she was like, that sounds so good, Caitlin. I really want to read that. And I'm like, okay, I'm definitely going to give you the first one then. Because they can be read as standalones. Like, honestly, like, it doesn't really progress Mariel's story that much in this book unless you, like, really loved the first one like I did, and I really wanted to read the second one. It was just so much fun, and I'm so happy I had picked this up again because her books are just great. So that's basically what this one was about. There wasn't really that much to it. It didn't feel as, like, faded as the first book did because I thought that she did that in such a beautiful way. But also, she didn't make this insta-lovey because they didn't say I love you until, like, the very end of the book. And I think it was, like, a few weeks, so maybe a little bit insta-lovey, but at the same time, like, they did spend a lot of time together, and they end up having to go on, like, this road trip together so they can go see this other witch to break his curse because he's a demon. So, and, he has, like, a curse put under him. I forget what it is, but it's just so funny. And then she also introduces werewolves in this, and also Caladia is, like, a badass. She, like, keeps on getting into, like, these bar fights with, like, random, creatures, like werewolves and, like, warlocks and stuff like that. And she keeps on getting kicked out of every club that she's in. And also she's been single for like a long time. And she's like upset that Mariel has found such an amazing man who's a demon. She's like, why can't I find any like men on earth? Like, why do you have to fall in love with a demon? It's just so funny. I just really adore these books. Okay. So next up, y'all, Next up, this book was crazy, okay? Crazy. I'm not going to talk about it for too long, though. Maybe like a couple of minutes. We'll see. I always put my foot in my mouth and I end up, talking forever about certain books. But this book, you guys, was insane. But this was my book club pick, and this was my first ever book club pick. And I ended up meeting these amazing ladies in the new Barnes & Noble that opened near me. And we ended up forming a book club. And the first book we ended up picking was Around the Dark Romance Table. And we ended up picking Kiss of the Basilisk by Lindsay Strobe. Now, this book is blowing up on TikTok. And it was originally called Split or Swallow. Now, I literally had no intentions of reading this book when I first heard about it, when it was called Split or Swallow. I'm not going to keep this up too long. But you guys, this book was actually never boring, super entertaining, really, really good plot, actually. But I have never read more smut in my entire life. I literally could care less about smut. I actually really enjoy reading about it. It does not bother me in the slightest. And actually, the smut writing in this kept me engaged the entire time. And that's a lot to say about, like, a book just not... Even though there was so much smut in this book, like, probably 90% of this book was smut. And some books, it can really annoy me if, like, the only part of the romance that you're interested in is the smut because the plot is so boring and weak. But honestly, this did not bore me once. This book was wild. Such a wild ride. And look at the sprayed edges. Just so pretty. So I gave this book a 4.5. And then I'm not going to hold on to it because this book is a brick. But basically, we're following the female main character's name is Tem. And I can't really explain the plot of this book unless I mention some smut. So if that bothers you, you can skip ahead. But I'm just going to say I'm going to talk a little bit about smut right now. So basically, the females of this kingdom that aren't like princesses are basically selected by the prince to basically be his wife. But the way that the prince selects a wife slash basically concubine is that they have to be trained by basilisks to basically have sex with the prince. But also, all of these women, well, actually, the only woman that is a virgin is the main character, which her name is Tem, which is short for Temperance. And she goes to be trained by the Basilisk King, which is named Caspian. And basically, he teaches her how to fuck, pretty much. So, yeah. And she ends up developing feelings for Caspian, but also she ends up really liking the prince. And that's all I'm going to say. But Tem annoyed the shit out of me sometimes. Okay? Because the prince, Leo, ended up being my absolute favorite character in this whole book. He literally broke my heart at the end. But the way that she treated him, when actually he was so understanding, so loving, and he basically wanted to give her the world. And she would always constantly push him away because, she was in love with Caspian. But the things that Caspian had her do for him, they were fucking nuts, all right? Like the basilisk rituals that they talked about in this book. But basically, they were wild, all right? There was a part that literally grossed me out so much that I wanted to DNF this book because it was disgusting, all right? It was gross, but I was like, I gotta see who she picks, y'all. I gotta see what happens. But it ended up being a wide choose, basically. So that's why there has to be a sequel, and it's called Between Two Kings, all right? Pretty much everybody knows about the wide choose thing, so It's not really spoiling, oh my god, spoiling anything. Can I speak? But basically, even though the basilisks help the humans in this way for the prince to find a queen, the humans and the basilisks are still at war. And I was kind of surprised by that. I was like, oh, I thought they were like be, you know, allies or like have like an agreement or whatever. Because the basilisks help out the kingdom. But sorry, one of my friends texted me. But anyway, the prince's father, why can't I speak? The king, basically. Leo is his heir who has to find a queen, obviously, so they can marry and he becomes king. But he ends up falling in love with Tem. But also the king, we don't know that he is keeping basilisks basically captive in the castle. And they have disappeared for a really long time. And the basilisks are, you know, obviously outraged by this. And they have to find a way to be able to save them. So that's basically what the plot is. I'm explaining it a lot more basic than it sounds because you just gotta read this book, y'all, because this book is fucking nuts, okay? It's nuts, but it was so entertaining. But it took me, I think 3.5 days to finish this because the last 50 pages I could not put it down, all right? It was just so good. But Caspian was hot as fuck, but also there were some parts that pissed me off about him too. But Tem annoyed me. She annoyed me. But then there were some parts where she was so confident, and then the next minute she's like, I don't know why you don't want to fuck me, pretty much. And then he's like, you don't have to do this. She's like, but I do, or you don't love me. I don't know. It was just a little bit annoying, but yeah, it is what it is. It was great though. Such a good time. And I'm literally so excited for us to get together to talk about it. I can't wait. Okay, so next up, I wanted just a light, silly palette cleanser because the end of Kiss of the Basilisk made me cry. And you know who made me cry? Leo. So he was one of my favorite princes that I ever read about, if not maybe my favorite. Because the way that this man was pathetic for Tem, but you found out why he was so sad, fucking wrecked me. Oh my god, I just loved him so much. I love me. Leo, he's my baby. I don't want anything to happen to him, all right? Probably my favorite character that I've read this month was Leo. Oh my god. Maybe I should start saying my favorite character that I've read every month. Or my favorite character from a book. Yeah, that'd be so great, right? I'm getting a little bit tired, so because I feel like I've been talking for a long time. Okay, next up, I really needed a palette cleanser, so like I said, was Sarah Adams' Practice Makes Perfect, which was the second book in the When in Rome series, so I ended up catching up with this series, and basically this one is about Annie, which is the youngest sibling in the family that we're following, and Will is Amelia's bodyguard. So he works for Amelia, which is the love interest in the first book. So Will and Annie have known each other for a while. So it's not like this was insta-lovey, but they pretty much have always felt like they would be more than friends because they've always had feelings for each other. But Annie is a virgin and she's never really had a boyfriend or really a long relationship, but Will is the town playboy, so pretty much done and dusted. So Will offers to work with Annie to make her better at, basically dating men. It was very similar to First Time Caller by B.K. Borison, if you read that, but this writing was a little bit more cringe, but I did really like Will as a main male character a lot more than the male character in that book. That book was giving me 5-star feelings, and then the way that the main male character was in that book, he kind of pissed me off and he was just like so rude to her. Will wasn't, but there was one part in this book where he like crashes one of her dates because she doesn't go on a date with a guy until like 250 pages into this book, and I'm like, that's kind of like really late because she's been practicing with Will a lot, like the first 200 pages of the book, and I was like, is she gonna go on a date with somebody? And then she ends up going on a date with one guy, and then Will ends up crashing the date, and I was like, that's kind of fucked up, Will, because he just can't admit that he has feelings for her because he doesn't believe in marriage because his brother calls him up and tells him, hey, I'm getting married, and he's like, why? Our parents, had a shitty marriage, and that's why he never wants to like get married, which is kind of dumb, to be honest. It's like, or if he believes that, that's fine, but that doesn't mean that he should push it on his brother, because that was annoying me a little bit. And also, again, the dialogue was a little bit cringe, but it ended up being really cute, and we knew that they were going to end up being together anyway. And we didn't know if Will was going to stay in that town forever because, he's always going with Amelia to, other states on tour and stuff like that. So he's not always there, but then he ended up, like, staying with her, and it was just really, really cute at the end. So it definitely had its moments. I think I gave it a 3.5 because I did enjoy the writing more so than When in Rome. I mean, I enjoyed the writing in When in Rome more so than Practice Makes Perfect, but it was still really cute, and I'm glad I caught up with the series. Okay, and then the last new release that I read in April, was the new Emily Henry book, because you guys know that Emily Henry and Abby Jimenez's books now both come out in April. Abby Jimenez is pretty much Emily Henry's biggest competition. But in my opinion, Abby Jimenez is the better writer. I just adore Abby Jimenez's writing, but also I really love Emily Henry's writing as well. So the next book that we read was Emily Henry's Great Big Beautiful Life. This book has been getting very mixed reviews, but y'all, I absolutely loved this book. Okay, I gave it a 5 stars. From the very beginning of this book, I was absolutely loving the writing, and I fell in love with Alice's character, and Hayden I ended up really loving too. I don't know. I just really adored this book. There were so many beautiful quotes in this, but basically, I think that Emily Henry is like the queen of warm, fuzzy romances. Like, even though Beach Read fucking destroyed me, and honestly, I have not found a book yet from Emily Henry that has topped Beach Read, but this has probably become my 3rd favorite Emily Henry book. I'm sorry, but that's my opinion, all right? I don't care if you guys didn't like it. I don't care if you loved it. I don't care if you hated it. It does not affect my rating whatsoever. I'm not a Emily Henry stan, but I do have to say I understand why she is popular. She is a very good writer. And she's one of my favorite romance authors for a reason. Her writing is really damn good, y'all. And I understand. So, anyway, it's about Hayden and Alice. And basically, they are rival journalists that are competing to write this memoir about this woman named Margaret, and everybody says it's very similar to the plot of The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. But I actually think she made it different enough with Alice and Hayden's romance, and I ended up really falling in love with their romance, and I just really liked Hayden. But also, Alice has a really strained relationship with her mom, and Hayden has a really strained relationship with his dad. And basically, like, both of their parents don't really accept what they do, which is, like, so crazy. When you're a journalist, that's, like, one of the most prestige jobs ever. My dad is a journalist, okay? He's met a ton of celebrities. He's traveled to probably 4 different continents at this point. And it's pretty amazing what they're able to do. So it's like, how the fuck is a journalist not a prestige job? I don't know. But anyway, Hayden, like, helps her, like, you know, navigate her relationship with her mother. But also Margaret is harboring a secret that you find out towards the end of the book. And it made me cry because basically Alice is actually a pretty big fan of Margaret, and she knows her work, and she really wants this job. And Hayden, honestly, he's a Pulitzer Prize winner, all right? He's a big time, big deal in the journalist industry. And basically, he doesn't really care about Margaret that much. But Margaret is writing, like, this memoir about, like, her life. And she doesn't know which journalist she wants to write it because she doesn't know who she can trust. And basically, they have to prove themselves in order to get the job. So I absolutely loved it. I cried at the end. I gave it a 5 stars. It is what it is. All right. I loved it. Okay. So next up, we actually ended up reading the standalone romantasy that I told you guys that I read earlier in this video. And we ended up reading Amid Clouds and Bones by Ella Fields. I actually started this probably the day before I read Great Big Beautiful Life. Also, I ended up reading both of these on my Kindle. Anytime I show my screen, it's either I read it on my Kindle or I ended up returning it because I just felt like I didn't need to keep it. Like The Conditions of Will, I read entirely physically, but then I returned it because I didn't feel the need to keep it, but it was still a really good book. So this book, y'all, this book was really good. So this is a fae romantasy, and it's about the main character. Why don't they ever list the damn names? I don't know what her name is. I don't remember her name. God damn it. I also forgot to make the quotes visible in this. It says the prince's name, but it doesn't say the female character's name, so I'm sorry. So basically, she is a half-breed, fae and human, and she is betrothed to the Seelie Fae king named Atakin. Sounded like Anakin, but I believe it's Atakin. Atakin, yeah. Atakin, Atakin, I don't know, whatever. And there is a rival king from the Unseelie, which is obviously Atakin's enemy. And Atakin does not like the female main character. I'm sorry again that I don't have her name. I don't know why. I feel like it was like Emily or something like that. I don't even know, y'all. Okay? Oh, Mildred. Okay. I looked at a review. So her name is Mildred. Kind of not my favorite name. But anyway, she is betrothed to Atakin. And he doesn't like her. He actually, like, wants to kill her. So, like, he kind of loathes her. And she is forced to live in the castle with him. And their banter is just so fucking funny. But she ends up, like, having to tolerate him because she's going to be his wife. But she ends up getting captured by the Unseelie Fae king because, you know, he's supposed to save her kingdom and he wants to marry her and all of that. And basically that's what this book is about. But then she ends up being able to go back to Atakin. But also she doesn't know who to trust because obviously Fae, if you guys know about Fae fantasy, Fae are untrustworthy pieces of shit pretty much. And they only understand making bargains with humans. So, but this book was really good. I think I gave it a 4. A 4.25 or a 4.5. Maybe it was a 4.25. Because, like, the ending, I actually feel like this book could have been a duology. Because I feel like I would have wanted to read a little bit more about these characters. And, like, have a little bit more background about the Unseelie king. I don't know why I can't remember his name right now either. I could have sworn his name started with an N. But the banter seriously was so much fun, and I just really enjoyed it. It was just a really good time, and I'm glad I ended up getting it off my TBR because I wanted to read it in March. After I did not like This Woman Kingdom, I really just wanted to read like a good, fast-paced romantasy besides Nightweaver, and this definitely delivered and was so much fun. And the smut was so much fun, and it was so hot. Okay, it was really, really good. Okay, and then the last 4 books that I read in April, I read all of them physically. So the next book that I read, and I just really wanted to finish this series off in April, so I did finish the Glimmer Falls trilogy in April, and I'm so happy that I did, because if you guys know, these books have been on my TBR for so long, and I knew I wanted to read these in the springtime, and I knew I just wanted to finish the series this year, because the first book was on my 25 and 2025, so now I can say that I finished the series. So this one is A Werewolf's Guide to Seducing a Vampire by Sarah Hawley. I actually ended up enjoying this one more so than the second one. I gave this one a 4.5. These books are just so good, you guys. They're so much fun. They're so funny. And this one is about Ben Rosewood, and he's a werewolf, and Eleanor Benencourt Devereaux. And I just see their names on the back. So they do say their full names on the back. And she's a vampire. And basically, he doesn't even end up summoning her. He buys like this stone on eBay. And he doesn't know that she's inside this stone, like basically cursed and confined in this stone. And she ends up, being able to break free of this stone. And basically, she's been in 6 centuries of captivity, okay? And the only person that's ever kept her company is this witch that cursed her to basically kill for her. And this witch needs Eleanor to kill for her to keep her immortality. She needs like human sacrifices. So Ben was probably my other favorite character that I read this month. And I think Ben is my favorite character that Sarah Hawley has written in this entire series. I just fell in love with him, you guys. And also, you guys, werewolf witch romance done right. Okay, this book was so much better than Bride. So much better than Bride from Ali Hazelwood. That's actually my least favorite Ali Hazelwood book. But, I don't know why Sarah Hawley is not more popular when I think that she's a better writer. And her romances are more entertaining. Even though there are a couple of Ali Hazelwood books that I actually really like, I feel like their writing style is very similar. So if you guys like Ali Hazelwood, I would suggest picking up this series from Sarah Hawley because I think that they're just so much fun. And this was just such a good book after I finished that romantasy. And it was just such a fun time. So basically, Ben has to help her break her curse. And that's basically the whole plot of this book. But Ben is not a vampire. Ben is a werewolf with anxiety that likes to knit. And that cracked me up, you guys. But some of the, things that Sarah goes into with, Ben's mental health, some of it is kind of dark, so check your trigger warnings, but it's still mostly a really great, fun time, and I just really, really love these books, you guys. So that's basically it, and Eleanor was hysterical. She is very defensive, and also she doesn't really know if she can trust Ben because she's a, 600-year-old vampire. And, when she first comes to, the town and he takes her out to dinner, she acts, fucking crazy. It's just so funny. There's kind of, a scene where she, pokes fun at Thor, where she wants another drink and she, throws it on the ground and she doesn't say another, but she's like, oh, isn't that how we're supposed to order another drink here? It was just hysterical. I thought this was just so much fun, and I'm so glad that I finished it off, and I'm glad that this was about, a different kind of romance besides a witch and a demon. But I actually probably would have ate it up if it was again. But I'm just so glad that I finally finished this. It was just such a great time. And just Ben was such a sensitive man. And I just loved it. He was just so funny. And he's like, you know, no matter what, he wants to devote. He's just a devoted man that wants to help her, you know, break free of her curse. And they end up falling in love. And it was just so cute. It was so cute. So, and again, the smut was hot and it was funny. And then you guys, guess what I finally read and finished? And in 4 days. 4 days, you guys. The Hunger Games trilogy. We finally read the Hunger Games series. So we read Hunger Games, Catching Fire, and Mockingjay. We finally did it. So, yeah. We did it. I'm going to say it 5 million times. So, The Hunger Games, 5 stars. Catching Fire, 5 stars. Mockingjay, 5 stars. There's literally no way that I could not rate these books 5 stars. And you cannot tell me how much of an impact these books have had on the YA genre or fiction writing in general. These books literally changed reading and writing in the fiction, the whole fiction world, to be honest. I think that Suzanne Collins is a genius, and I love and adore these books. So they're very hard to read, though. So I would say check your trigger warnings, but I feel like they're necessary in the way that they're written. So basically, if you guys didn't know, The Hunger Games, if you've been living under a rock, but also if you've never read them before, basically it's about our female heroine's name is Katniss Everdeen, and she is selected to, well, she's actually not selected. Her sister is selected to compete in these Hunger Games that are sick and twisted games that basically humans compete for their lives. And basically the only way you win is by killing everyone but yourself. And that's the only way you win the Hunger Games. And that is the sick and twisted games of the Hunger Games. And that's the only way that a victor is declared. So these games are run by the sick and twisted President Snow. And basically he, you know, brainwashes his people, claiming that this is to give, you know, his people hope, when it's more so just so he can stay in power, pretty much. So it's crazy. So basically, Katniss volunteers as tribute. I volunteer as tribute. If you guys don't know that, it's probably all over TikTok. And she volunteers to take Prim's place in the Hunger Games because she is too young to compete and she doesn't want her to die that young. And she competes, and she ends up competing with a man named Peeta, and Peeta is the District 12 champion for them. So they have, tribute for the Hunger Games. So each district is 1 through 12 and 13, but 13 is pending. But anyway, Katniss is the female tribute and Peeta is the male tribute, and they both get trained by this past victor named Haymitch, and he basically needs to keep Katniss alive. Okay? So that's what happens in the first book. The second book, I'm gonna get a little spoilery, but honestly, it's the Hunger Games. Oops. Oopsie poopsie. I'll just put it back in the bag. Basically, Katniss and Peeta's lives are at stake in this book because they pissed off President Snow, because they ended up surviving the Hunger Games, and basically they're in extreme danger from President Snow in the second book. And she ends up developing a romance with Peeta in the first book. Even though it's for show, she ends up finding out his real feelings about her in the second book. And also, the districts are rebelling in this book because, they are fed up with how things are going in the districts. They don't want this system to be keeping on going on because basically they're like human sacrifices. Like, what's the point of them being able to live, normal lives when like they can't even live through a day without worrying about, being called to compete in the Hunger Games. So again, it's sick and twisted, but that's the concept of these books. And then that's why these books were so damn impactful. You can see how much these books also influenced Fourth Wing. So if you haven't read these books yet and you've read Fourth Wing like me, you need to read these books. You need to read these. Like, I would not stress any more about reading a series so much than The Hunger Games, because these books are incredible. And like pretty much like everybody that I see write reviews of these books, no one dislikes The Hunger Games, to be honest, honestly, they're amazing. So and what was the other thing? So Katniss and Peeta are basically worried that, another Hunger Games is going to take place. So, and Katniss feels, also Katniss becomes like the beacon of hope for the districts because she's the only one that has shown this kind of rebellion against President Snow because of how she won the first Hunger Games with Peeta. So that's how the second book goes. And then in the third book, basically, is about the whole rebellion of the districts. And they, again, want to stop these Hunger Games, but also Katniss becomes, like, pretty much the head of the rebellion in this book. And people look at her as almost like a savior, and she is called the Mockingjay, and that's why this is called Mockingjay. But also, if you read the books, you realize how significant the Mockingjays are in these stories and how impactful they are. And the constant theme that Suzanne Collins puts in these books about Mockingjays. And basically, Katniss has to fight for her family. She has to fight for her mother and for Primrose and for Peeta and for Gale and for all the people that care about her. But also she feels that she's always constantly at war with herself a lot in these books. And that's what makes her such an incredible female protagonist, is that she's constantly questioning her actions. She never thinks that she's not too confident about it, so she's not cocky, but at the same time she basically makes decisions with the reader, and you feel like you really live in her head throughout the entirety of this trilogy. So, if you don't like Katniss, you're not going to like the series. And I think that the way that she wrote Katniss was just an incredibly human character where you can relate to her so much. But also, basically you go through, her problem solving and her decisions throughout the entire series. And basically this book is about, how they're going to overthrow President Snow and take down the Capitol because they have had enough of these, trials ruining their lives and basically killing their sons, their daughters, their fathers, Again, what's the point of having kids and children when they are condemned to die, pretty much? So it's really sad. I actually ended up not crying. I teared up a little bit at the second book, but I actually ended up not crying. I actually ended up crying more so watching the first movie than I did reading the books, but also I did listen to a lot of the audiobooks of these. So that might be why, but also I did finish this in Barnes & Noble earlier. And after I finished it, I just felt numb. I felt really numb after reading these. I think it's because you have to almost disassociate with the events of these books. And what makes these books so amazing as well is that us as humans, when something traumatic happens, we don't really have that much power to do much about it. We'll post it on Facebook, we'll talk about it, we'll say how tragic it is. And I feel like that's how you feel reading these books. it's like, oh my God, that's horrible. Oh my God, this, oh my God, that. But it's like they're fictional characters, but at the same time, it's like you care so much about them because the way that Suzanne Collins writes this story is pretty much, it's super political, but also like she makes them so real that you feel like you're feeling all these emotions with them. So they're just incredible. I absolutely loved this series. And what a way to end April. And the reason why I wanted to read these books now over never, but also they were on my 25 books in 2025. So I did finish all 3 of them. I cannot believe I finished them that quickly. But also my Libby loan for Sunrise on the Reaping came through a couple days ago. And also I actually started The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes literally like 2 hours ago. I started the audiobook because I really didn't feel like reading the physical book, and I felt like I needed a break after Mockingjay. So, yeah. So that's pretty much it. And I'm going to continue listening to the audiobook and reading that. I think that Sunrise on the Reaping is going to destroy me because this is actually the highest rated book in the entire series. And also, everyone that I've seen read this book, they literally say they're destroyed and they're like crying for hours. So I'm like, I'm nervous about that book because at least with the Hunger Games, I kind of remembered what ended up happening because I've seen all the movies. But also, like, it was interesting to see, like, how much this is going to add to me watching the movies now. So that's why I want to rewatch the movies. And also, like, I haven't seen the movies in so long. I, like, really don't remember them. So I've only watched the first one so far because I didn't have time to watch the second one last night after I finished it. I think earlier yesterday, and then I finished it the day before, but I wanted to start watching the movie yesterday. So yeah, that's it. I'm going to go because I need to shut up. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please like and subscribe. Follow me on my Instagram at CBW819 and check out my Goodreads in the link below. Going to be down there, okay? And again, I can't believe I read 20 books this month, but at the same time, do not gauge your reading based on how many books you read. I mean, for me, I just, I'm crazy and I go through books really fast now, but at the same time, you read at your own pace. Again, it does not matter how many books you read as long as you're reading. All right. So hope you guys enjoyed this video and have a great day. Bye. Keep reading. Bye-bye.